So here we are on the final day of our first ever Got Questions conference. I hope you've been enjoying yourself. This has been an incredible conference so far, and I'm looking forward to today's lineup of speakers and topics. Alycia Wood spoke on our opening night, and she's going to kick us off this morning with a talk called Remember Me? Does anyone remember me in my pain? Alycia, go ahead and take it away this morning.
Well, hello again, friends. Alycia Wood here with Ravi Zacharias International Ministries, and I am here to speak with you on a topic that is something I honestly never thought I would have to speak on. But our current climate and our current situation in the world has led to increased increased experiences of sadness, of grief, of loneliness, of depression, all of these things. It's interesting because, we have technology and technology is supposed to make things better. And one of the things that we've been discovering is that technology, some parts of technology, not all things, some parts of technology may actually be contributing to this problem. And so, what I'm going to speak with you on today is all of these kind of things: loneliness, sadness, grief, pain, depression, these kind of things. And this talk is actually specifically titled Remember Me. Does anyone see me in my dark times? I will say off the bat, I am not a psychologist. I'm an apologist. And so what I'm definitely, everything I'm saying to you is going to be um, uh, said with the intention and the hope that this will fuel you or drive you or motivate you to seek help with a professional. I myself just came out of counseling, but I was in counseling for 4 years, 4.5 years actually, I think. And I just recently ended it. And so I'm a big advocate for therapy and counseling and all of these things. And some of what I'm sharing with you are things that I've learned through those interactions and through those times and sessions, and just from talking to different psychologists and that kind of thing. So, what I'm not going to do is give you a Bible verse and say you just need to read, Leviticus chapter 14 or something like that, and that's somehow going to bring you, all the healing and that you're experiencing for pain and just extreme sadness and grief, and that is not at all what I'm trying to say. And so I'm not going to take that approach either. Um, really, my goal is to help people understand that even though they may feel in a state of helplessness or feel like they're in a state of hopelessness, that is not the whole picture. That there's actually more, and that there is actually help, there is actually hope, and so that is my goal. So we live in a world of chronic, chronic pain, loneliness, depression, sadness, agony, suffering, shame, even shame and regret, even. And maybe you know what I'm talking about. Maybe you can relate with some of those words. Maybe some of those words can really connect with where you're at. But regardless, um, there you at least know somebody who is experiencing one of those things. But I'm willing to bet that that is an actual experience that you yourself can relate to. Maybe you relate to Fontaine and Les Mis. I'll read you part of what one of the famous songs that she sings. I dreamed a dream, and it goes like this: "As I dreamed a dream in times gone by, when hope was high and life worth living. I dreamed that love would never die. I dreamed that God would be forgiving. Then I was young and unafraid, and dreams were made and used and wasted. There was no ransom to be paid, no song unsung, no wine untasted, but the tigers come out at night with their voices soft as thunder, as they tear your hope apart, as they turn your dream to shame. I had a dream. My life would be so different from this hell I'm living, so different now from what it seemed. Now life has killed the dream I dreamed." Maybe many of you kind of relate to that, where you can recall times in your life where you were laughing with friends. There were sunny days, there was excitement, you were feeling great, you were feeling loved, but instead your reality turned into maybe a story of abuse or death or divorce or whatever the situation might be. Or maybe you were someone who never experienced those great things in the past, but you always dreamed that one day you would. Maybe you always dreamed that life would be so great and it's turned out to be such a disappointment. Maybe Mother's Day and Father's Days are not exciting holidays for you. Maybe Christmas and Thanksgiving and these times when people long to be with family and friends doesn't bring you the same joy. Maybe you dream that life would bring fulfillment, and yet you're wondering, why am I here? Does any of this matter? Is there any meaning? Is there any purpose to what I'm doing? And so that unanswered question on what the point of life is, and maybe has left you feeling lost and alone when no one else seems to feel the same way that you do. Maybe you've come to the point where you're not sure what to believe in. And maybe, is there a God or isn't there a God? And so it seems that there's a big jump between our dreams and reality. And sometimes the two never meet. And so life kills the dream, and we wonder why we bothered to dream in the first place. Not only has our life not turned out the way we want to, but we feel like there's nothing we can do to change our circumstance, nothing we can do to protect ourselves. And so we have this sense of feeling helpless. Or maybe we have no control over what's happening to us. And so we finally just surrender and give up and have a feeling of hopeless. And if you think that it's just you that's experiencing all of these feelings, let me assure you that it is not just you. I want to spend some time going through some statistics with you. I think a lot of people don't realize how widespread some of these issues are, how prevalent some of these issues are in people's lives. And so there's actually been a lot of studies actually that have come out letting people and indicating to people the depth of this issue. And so I want to read to you actually some information from some studies that I've looked at. This particular study was published in California in September of 2016. It looked at LA Unified, which is California's largest school district and it's the second largest school district in the nation. It looked at a variety of events and behaviors that affected their over 600,000 students from 2015 to 2016. And this one of the areas they studied was suicidal behavior and ideation, cutting, like self-injury, cutting is an example, and voluntary and involuntary hospitalization. So for those four categories, they recorded 5,624 incidents. 5,624 incidents. Now, if you think that's a lot, you need to know that in 2010 and 2011, the year that they first started recording this information, there was only 255 incidents. So it's gone from 255 to 6 years later being 5,624. The World Health Organization at the same time reports that depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide. 800,000 people die each year from suicide amongst 15 to 29-year-olds. It is the second leading cause of death for that age group. So 800,000 people die each year from suicide, and in 15 to 29-year-olds, it's the second leading cause of death. A November 2017 article in The Economist stated that, I want to actually read you what they said. Over the past decade, the number of American children and teenagers admitted to children's hospitals for reporting suicidal thoughts has more than doubled. Some have not received help in time. And after declining for years, the suicide rate for 15 and 19-year-olds shot up between 2007 and 2015, increasing by 31% for boys and more than doubling for girls. And while The Economist doesn't want to directly link social media as the culprit, a link between the rise of social media has been documented by other organizations. So Forbes magazine published an interesting article in April of 2016 discussing a National Institutes of Health funded study into the correlation between depression and social media. The article was published in the April 1st issue of Depression and Anxiety, which is the official journal for the Anxiety and Depression Association of America. This study polled 1,787 adults in the U.S. between the ages of 19 and 32 years old. These adults use social media 61 minutes a day and visited social media websites on average 30 times a week. All right? This is what they found, that those that use social media frequently had 2.7 times the likelihood of depression. 2.7 times the likelihood of depression. Why? Well, the article goes on to talk about how social media elicits feelings of jealousy. Somebody gets on and they see other people's lives and everybody else seems to be so happy, seems to be going so well, and it makes you kind of feel like everybody else has a better life than you. So you've got the sense of jealousy where you're jealous of somebody else's life. But also, social media encourages cyberbullying and internet addiction. But it's also important to note that social media easily throws people into a mode of comparison, comparing themselves to other people, especially when it comes to celebrity culture, and especially when it comes to your friends, um, or people that you really want to be like. Like, we have this comparison culture that really rises up, and so our value can oftentimes be tied in with how beautiful we see ourselves in comparison to somebody else. Or we can determine whether or not our life is fruitful or good based off of the good things that happen in our life versus what we see happening in somebody else's life. And so, um, this is where Instagram, I know that some people are Instagram lovers, and I totally understand that. But Instagram is really toxic when it comes to this. It's very, very dangerous because it's the world of pictures, images, amazing outfits, smiling teeth, great hair, great muscles. It is the land of make believe because it's what people put, that they want people to, how they want people to see them. It is the image that people put forward of how they want people to look at them. And we forget that it is one snippet of reality, but it isn't the whole picture. Dr. Paul Brand, who was a medical doctor with leprosy patients both abroad in India and other places, and also North America, says that image has come to mean the illusion of what something is presented to be rather than the essence of what it really is. And so we make the mistake of allowing people who should have no power over our lives to be our biggest influence. Jennifer Lopez once said, "The thing I'm most afraid of is being alone," which I think a lot of performers fear. It's why we seek the limelight. So we're not alone, we're adored, we're loved. So people want to be around us. The fear of being alone drives my life. And so here's the thing that we need to know and understand about celebrity culture, friends. People were never intended to be the greatness that we strive for. People were never intended to be the greatness that we strive for. They too are looking for a greatness to help them. They too hurt. They too often wish that their lives were different and lie in bed at 3 a.m., maybe not looking forward to the morning. And so maybe some of you have been brought to believe that something is wrong only with you. And so now here you are, frustrated with yourself, disappointed with yourself, and hating your life. And so maybe because of reasons like this and others I didn't mention, you're someone who's just giving up. But do you have to? Perhaps this is where a reshaping of hope can be helpful to us. Why? Because hope points to the fact that there is light in the midst of darkness. And see, hope really changes the way that we process through life because, as my colleague Tom Price says, hope is the ability to say it's not over. Things can still get better. The end has not come. Hope is the ability to imagine a better future. Well, that may sound trivial or childish to you, but let me give you an example of how we can understand hope a little bit better. Um, Probably everybody that's listening to me, or at least most people that are listening to me, have their driver's license. Okay. And you know that when you get in your car, what's one of the first things you should do is you should put on your seatbelt. So you get in, you put on your seatbelt. Why do you do that? Because we know that there is a chance that you can get in a car accident, and that seatbelt will help keep you safe. So the fact that there is a possibility or there's a chance that you get in a car accident means that what you do is you get in and you put on that seatbelt. Small change, small interjection in your life. But what if you knew for sure, for certain, that if you got in that car, you would actually die? You would get in a horrible car accident and you would die. Would you get in that car and put on a seatbelt, or would you not get in that car at all? In other words, when you have a guarantee of something, it drastically overhauls how you live. You're not even going to go near that car because you know what's going to happen. The possibility just meant, oh, I'm going to put on my seatbelt. But the guarantee meant I'm not going to get in the car at all. That is how hope is described in the Christian framework. It is a guarantee of what is to come. Hope is not just like, oh, I just would really like it if this happened. Oh, I hope you can come to my birthday party or something like that. That's, I really like it if this can happen. When Christianity talks about hope, it is talking about a guaranteed future that cannot be changed by anything that happens here. Heaven will not disappear. God will not disappear. Those things will not dissipate if things in your life don't go the way you want. That is a guaranteed future. And so if Christianity is true, then hope is real. And if hope is real, then we know two things definitely are at least true. Number one, we know that you're important. As the music group Hawk Nelson once said, you're beautiful, you're wonderful, you're beautiful, wonderful, you're perfectly made, perfectly made. You're meant to be what you see. You're not a mistake, not a mistake. Brighter than stars that shine, you light up the Maker's eyes, and you'd believe if you could see the smile on his face the moment you were made. You know what atheism says? You're just DNA machines living to make more DNA, or you're cosmic pollution, and we wonder why we're depressed. If that's our outlook, we wonder why we are depressed. That mentality makes no sense in the Christian perspective. To accept Christianity is to accept a beautiful revelation about yourself that you are valuable. But hope also teaches the fact that this world with all of its heartache is temporary. When someone says to God, God, I want to follow you, then they have a changing of their thought life. See, the greatest hope for the Christian is not that things are going to be great now, not that everything's going to be fixed now, not that this is going to be a world with no pain or suffering, but that the world of the future will be a world with no pain and no suffering. There's a better world to come. To accept Christianity is to say, I now have hope. And when it doesn't necessarily change the way that life treats you now, it changes the way in which you treat life. And here's the thing, friends, when you are in a tunnel and you're lost and it's dark and there's utter blackness, the one thing you do not do is sit down. You do not sit down in that tunnel. Why? Because there is a way out. And if you sit down and don't move, you will never find that way out. If you're lost, you keep moving. You keep walking. Now, when it's not this time, the situation of COVID and all of these things, I spent a lot of time flying. One of the things that is so striking to me when you're flying is oftentimes I get to the airport and it's pouring rain and you get on the plane and it's rain and you can see out the window the rain pouring down the sides of the window. And then the plane takes off and it flies above the clouds. And once it gets above the clouds, it's perfectly sunny. There's not no more is there rain falling on the windows of the plane. And it's so interesting to me that a few seconds ago, it was raining. And all of a sudden, it no longer is raining. It's sunny and beautiful. In other words, even though I'm experiencing sun right now, I was just experiencing rain. The sun didn't disappear. The rain didn't disappear. They were actually both happening at the same time. Both the rain and both the sun exist at the same time. But when you're in the rain, all you feel or experience is the dirtiness and misery a dark, gloomy day may bring. But you have to remind yourself that that's not the whole truth. That the reality or the whole truth is that there is sun. And so when we're living in distress or darkness and extreme pain, you need to know something about yourself. You need to know that in that moment of duress, extreme pain, you will have impaired thinking. Your tools of self-governance may be lost, but also your sense of truth is distorted. So you will have impaired thinking. Your tools of self-governance will be lost, may be lost, but also you will have a sense of distorted truth. Because everything that you are experiencing is going through that lens of pain, which means that we believe things to be true that simply aren't. We believe that the darkness is all that there is, that you're not important, that you're a failure, a disappointment, not loved, that the world would be better off without you. And I'm sure many of you are saying, but Alycia, you don't know what it's like to feel so alone in this world, to feel the pain of a cut, to not want to get out of bed in the morning, to not know, you don't know what it's like to cry for help and nobody responds unless you take drastic measures. But are you sure? Are you sure I don't know? Are you sure the people around you don't know? One thing I've learned in my adult life is that everyone is going through something. Everyone is hurting in some way. And in fact, that's a bit of why I wrote this talk in the first place, because I've traveled all around the world, and I've learned that people are fundamentally the same. We ask the same questions, we mourn and cry over the same things. In other words, guys, we exist in a world where there is both pain and grief happening to us at the same time. Rain and sun, gloom and brightness, darkness and light. A world that almost asks us to hurt. And we will never escape it. We will never escape that world. But I want to tell you that there is a way to live in it. Several years ago, I read a New York Times article by a gentleman named Jason Green. It was titled, "Children Don't Always Live." Jason shares his story in this article where his young 2-year-old daughter, Greta, was simply sitting on a bench in New York City with her grandmother. And in just a weird happenstance, a piece of a building just fell off and it fell stories and stories down and hit Greta in the head as she sat there on that bench with her grandmother. They rushed her to the hospital and she underwent emergency brain surgery, but she never regained consciousness and was pronounced brain dead. Jason and his wife went on to have another child born exactly 3 and a half years later after Greta's death. The child they said they never actually would have had Greta been alive. And Jason vividly remembers how when Greta was young, he and his wife would often check on her to make sure she was breathing. Many of you parents probably relate to that, going over to the crib just to check on just to see if you can see their stomach going up and down. When they admitted the silly practice to another mother, she chuckled and said they're always breathing. But now with the birth of this new son, he found himself deep in thought. He reflected on his young child's future, and he says these very profound words, and I want to read to you what he says. He says, "When I'm on the playground years from now watching my son take a fall from the monkey bars, I might not panic, but some part of me will remember a heartbeat can stop. Hearing a heartbeat for the first time during the ultrasound and then watching doctors shine light on unresponsive pupils 2 years later, you stop thinking of a heartbeat as a constant and more as a favorable weather condition. Now, I'm a reminder of the most unwelcome message in human history. Children, yours and mine, they don't necessarily live." When I realized Greta would not live, I wanted to die so purely and so simply. I could feel my heart gazing up at me quizzically, asking me in between beats, "Are you sure you want me to keep doing this?" But I found I could not give the order. He then turns our focus back to his baby son, although his son is still too young to understand. I talked to him about his sister, whom I think he met before arriving. "Your daddy will always be sad your sister's not here," I tell him, "but you fill daddy's heart up with joy. And he loves you more than everything." I also want to say, but do not, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I'll never be the same father I was before. I'm sorry that you will live with me to some degree in grief. We as people who exist in this world are people who live in grief. Jason, like so many of us, are forced to live our lives in this new pain, in this new way of existence that's different than before. It's different than how we lived before the trauma, different than how we lived before the abuse, different than how we lived before we felt life ripped from us too early. We won't live the same as before, but we don't have to. This new moment, painful as it is, becomes our new normal. We merely find a way to live in the pain. We live knowing that the rain and the sun coexist. You might be surprised to know that the Bible, too, often has stories or situations of people who are in extreme agony or distress or grief. There's a very famous passage in Psalm 42 where man cries out to God, seeking him, even saying, I thirst for you. He wonders when he will get God's attention. Meanwhile, he's in a state of constant crying. So much so that he says, my tears have been my food day and night. People criticize him, saying, where's your God? You believe in this God. Where is he now? I don't see him. Why isn't he helping you? Shouldn't everything be fine with you? Because you're in grief, he should answer you. But this man gathers himself together and says, what's wrong with you? Why are you so downcast? Put your hope in God. Since you're grieving, remember him because he remembers me. And he will comfort me with his love during the day and his music at night. So while this man was still in grief in Psalm 42, he worked on changing where his hope lied. It's okay to say you're not okay. It's okay to say you're hurt. It's okay to tell. And just know that hope will not be eliminated by the rain, and joy will find a way to endure through the pain. Hold on. I don't know about you, but I have regrets in my life. I look over my past and I think, man, Alycia, you really messed that up, or you shouldn't have done that, or whatever it might be. And I think sometimes it's easy, depending on the situation, easy for people to forgive the situation. It isn't always easy for you to forgive yourself. And so naturally, if we have a hard time forgiving ourselves, we think there's no way God would forgive us. But is that true? Is it possible that you can do something so bad that you can't be forgiven? According to the Bible, the only thing that you can do where you can't be forgiven is blasphemy of God. In other words, lying, insulting him, discrediting him, rejecting him, all of these things, denying him as God, saying you really aren't God. You really aren't all powerful. You really aren't real. When Jesus was being crucified, he had two criminals also being crucified on both sides of him. The first criminal said, aren't you the Messiah? Come on, save yourself and us. Come on, do your thing here. The second criminal had a much different attitude. He said, we actually deserve our punishment. But this man, this Jesus, has done nothing wrong. And he turns to Jesus and he says, remember me. Remember me when you come into your kingdom. And what was Jesus' response? Today you'll be with me in paradise. An interesting request is this man literally has nothing that he can give to God to buy his forgiveness. He is on a cross. There's nothing he can offer him, nothing he can do but say, remember me. He is literally a criminal experiencing his death sentence for the crime that he committed. And he has the nerve to think that God would see him and forgive him, recall him to his mind in heaven, that God would remember him after what he's done. You probably remember, or probably familiar with the word grace. There's many ways in which grace can be defined, but grace is commonly defined as getting what you don't deserve or unmerited favor. Grace means the possibility of you having a relationship with God is not based on you doing a bunch of good things to earn it, but rather a gift that he gifts to us. He gives to those of us who want to receive it. Grace is God loving you in your dirty, torn clothes, loving you in the filthy bed of shame and humiliation that never gives you mental peace. A relationship with him is what we are given. That is what we seek after, and that's what we're given in spite of what we do wrong. We're given forgiveness, we're given mental peace from our past, and we're given acceptance with God. Grace is not about getting what you deserve. You don't get what you deserve with grace. That's the whole point. What you deserve is a permanent broken relationship with your Creator. Rather, you get acceptance from God, who's fully aware of all your failures but accepts you anyways. That means that when you disappoint yourself and you're hurt by others so that you feel alone, or you even hurt others so that you feel even more alone, you haven't been abandoned by God. It means that in a world full of making people ashamed of themselves, of their failures and wrongs, that there is forgiveness. And in a world where everything is earned, and we really feel love. We really need to feel love, but it's rare. Knowing that truth, my friend, will change the way you process through every moment of your life. Can Christianity be of help to us during these times? Yes. In moments of pain and agony, we want two things. First, we all want someone to take the pain away. Someone to eliminate the bad and bring back the good and rescue us. This explains our fascination with superheroes, Batman and Thor and Captain America. And these superheroes, it's so interesting, our fascination with superheroes, because they are human, but yet kind of not. They come from a different planet, but yet come to Earth to save us from the evil that's around us that we can't save ourselves from. They've got these powers that we don't have. They're stronger than us. They're smarter than us. And yet we love watching these movies without connecting it to the very human nature that longs and looks for a Messiah to save us from ourselves and the evil that we see in the world around us. We want someone to take the pain away. But secondly, we also want someone to be with us. We want to be known. We want to know, does anybody see me? Does anybody remember me? Christianity refers to Jesus as Emmanuel, which means God with us. Now that has huge implications. It means that we have someone to wipe our tears. The creator of the universe sees you and goes through your pain with you. We have someone who says, I will never be ashamed of you, so you don't need to be ashamed of yourself. And we have someone who says they will never turn their back on you. Believe it or not, Christianity claims a God who knows what it's like to be in agony, duress, and grief, because he experienced them. And I think his response can be helpful to us. Many of you are familiar with the story of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. It's where he was before he ended up being crucified, arrested and being crucified. And I think that there are some things in this story that we can learn that can help us today. When Jesus was in that garden, praying and in agony, he, number one, chose some close friends to walk with him. He chose his disciples. He said to them, pray. But even his friends became exhausted and fell asleep. Listen, friends, if you choose to walk with somebody, walk with them. It will be exhausting. It will wear you out. But stand with them. If somebody's coming to talk to you about where they're at with some of these things, walk that journey with them. It doesn't mean that you need to be their therapist. That's a different story. And hopefully you are one, and it should be that you are one of many people who are walking with them. Doesn't mean you take on the whole burden yourself. But you, along with others, can collectively come together and walk with somebody, taking on their pain and grief. But number two, Jesus was honest about his situation. He said, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. We know that he was so concerned about what was happening that he began to sweat blood. When you're honest about how you feel, you begin to question whether your feelings are rational or if they're lies. You begin to feel that things will never get better. But is that true? You might feel like no one will ever love you. But do you know that? You may feel that you fail at everything, but is that really what happens? But number 3, Jesus cried out to God for help. He said, please, God, if there is a way that you can stop this from happening to me, please stop it. Did God grant Jesus' wish? No. But he did feel strengthened by an angel God sent him to comfort him. In other words, God didn't change his circumstance, friends, but he provided comfort in it. That is one thing that our society doesn't understand, is we are a society that is fueled by eliminating pain. If you have a headache, take this drug. If you're feeling this pain, take this medication. We are a society that loves to find ways to eliminate pain, and as a result, we are not very good at knowing how to live in it. God will not always take away the pain. He will not always change the circumstance, but he will provide comfort so that you have a way to live in it. And yet we know that one of Jesus' final statements to his followers was, I am with you always, which means that he will never turn his back on you. While serving God who has experienced dark times may not seem significant to some, let me see if I can unpack this a bit further. When a crying child gets hurt, in fact, I just had this just the other day with my 3-year-old little neighbor. He fell and scraped up his knee, but this is the knee that he's already fallen and scraped up. And so he just keeps re-injuring this knee. And he tried so hard not to cry. His friends were around, and they're like 4 and 6, and he was trying so hard not to cry, to be a big boy. But eventually it just hurt so bad, and he just came over to me and crying, and I learned that, your shirt becomes the place for them to dump all of their tears and saliva and everything else just on your shirt. And in that moment where he just came to me and I just gave him a hug and picked him up, I'm no longer just a bystander. I'm no longer someone who just saw him get hurt, but I'm someone who actually entered into his pain. I'm someone who experiences the pain when he comes running to me. And as I touch him, as I wipe his tears, I'm getting his hurt on my hands. And my heart hurts too as I listen to him cry over the pain. As he wipes his tears on me, I too have his tears as a part of my experience in this moment. His pain is on me. Trust me, friends, God can handle your pain. He's with you. He knows you. He sees you. He remembers you. He values you. You are loved. And love is greatest in its demonstration by how much somebody is willing to do for us. And so in Christianity, the fact that we have a God who demonstrates love in the greatest possible way, which is through self-sacrifice, the fact that we have a God who does that shows us the depth of God's love for us. Several years ago now, an early part of, I guess you could say, the last generation, so 2011, Gordon and his wife, Norma, Gordon was 94, Norma was 90, left their small town of State Center, Iowa, to go into town. Now, keep in mind, they were married for a very, very, very long time. When you are 94 years old and 91 years old, You are married for a very long time. They sadly got in a car accident en route to town. And they were brought to the hospital. And when they realized that their conditions were not getting better, they moved their beds so that they were next to each other and they could hold each other's hand. Her right hand holding onto his left hand. Sadly, Gordon Yeager died that afternoon. And what was interesting for the family is that after Gordon died, they looked up at his heart monitor, the machine, and they said, it's still showing a pulse. It's still showing that there's a heartbeat. And the nurse looked over and said, your mom is still holding his hand. And the heart monitor is picking up her heartbeat beating through his body. Norma died exactly an hour later after her husband. Like I said at the beginning, friends, I'm no psychologist. And I can't promise you that if you become a Christian, or even as a Christian, that 4-year-olds won't get sick and die. I can't promise you that brain cancer still won't be an issue. I can't promise you that car accidents and illness and natural disasters still won't take loved ones from us, or even freak accidents. But what I can promise you is that the depth and breadth of God's love for you exists even when you don't love you. And so because God is with you, and because God's love for you is so deep, you will never feel helpless and you will never live hopeless. Because in those moments, when you feel absolutely dead and defeated, it is God holding your hand, whose heart will beat through you, giving you life. Thank you, guys.
Wow. Thank you, Alycia. That was incredible. We've only got 2 more sessions left, and you do not want to miss them. Take a short break and be back here at 10 a.m. for our next session with Cameron McAllister. He's going to give a talk entitled Confronting Hypocrisy in the Church. I'll see you back here in shortly.